This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome to a new week here in the X-Zone. By the way, it's Halloween evening, so happy Halloween, everyone. I hope everyone's going out dressed up, getting their candies. And I'm not talking about you adults. I'm talking about the kids. Halloween is for children. And please, if you're driving out there, be careful. Children may be zigzagging all over the streets. You know how it is to be a child and be excited about going door to door and asking for candy, dressed up in a costume. Kids, that's what your parents tell you not to do 364 days of the year, is go outside, speak to strangers, and take candies from strangers. But on Halloween, it seems to be okay. Talk about giving a kid mixed signals. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X-Zone Nation, my first guest tonight is David Nabhan. We're going to be talking about predicting the great earthquake. And David was on the show a couple of months ago, and he actually predicted some dates of earthquake activity. And let's bring David on. Hey, David, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Afternoon, Rob. It's a real pleasure to talk with you again. Thanks for having me on.
It's a great pleasure, David. Tell us, did the predictions that you make come true?
Well, I was on your show, I believe, September the 1st, and what happened, I focused on 2 dates specifically. One of them, and I mentioned the hours, actually. I focused on October the 26th from 4:45 to 7:55 p.m. And what happened isn't really evidence, but it's pretty solid proof that, it's not solid proof that every single word I've written in forecasting the catastrophe is, holy writ. What it is, though, is definite evidence that the governor of California should impanel the Earthquake Advisory Council to determine forthwith and beyond a doubt what sort of proof is represented by the dynamics laid out, because there was a 4.8 earthquake that struck no more than 3.5 hours outside of the exact time and date that I had calculated 2.5 years ago and published, and that I had mentioned on, worldwide on your show on September the 1st. So I'm not intimating that the events such as the 26th, even though a sizable event like that transpiring so close is, is pretty, it's proof positive. The bar set much lower. What I'm asking for is simply that we determine whether there is water held by these dynamics.
If, in fact, there is proof that this system works, why do you think the government has not implemented it? Because, obviously, to predict an earthquake would be predicting the saving of lives.
Well, Rob, orthodoxy is it's a wonderful thing. It allows for, expectation of certain standards. It creates norms, and it imposes order on the world. It's a double-edged sword, though. Human stupidity knows no bounds when blind faith is placed in an immutable orthodoxy. And there's been an orthodoxy. The earthquake prediction is impossible crowd has been running the show for the last century. And history is replete with jaw-dropping reminders of this axiom. I mean, we don't need to talk about Copernicus and Galileo and Columbus and all those mega examples. There's plenty of them in seismology too. I mean, the father of seismology, Alfred Wegener, was pilloried to his death in Greenland in the 1930s. Your listeners would be stunned to hear what seismologists and geologists had said about Alfred Wegener, the fellow who discovered plate tectonics.
All right, let's talk about this when we come back from this 2-minute commercial break. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour, is David Nabhan, and his website is www.earthquakepredictors.com, and he is the author of a previous book, Predicting the Next Great Quake. www.earthquakepredictors.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes. Whatever you do, do not go away. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
All right, Randy Bachman is singing that with Bachman Turner Overdrive. You ain't seen nothing yet. And I'm going to tell you something. I was part of a very small earthquake in Quebec going back to 1983, I believe. I had just finished doing some work at night. I came home. The wife and the children were in bed. I was sitting down watching TV, and it all of a sudden, now you've got to imagine this, that there were no train tracks near where we lived at that time. It sounded as if a freight train was heading right for the house. There was a small rumble, and then you heard it. You can actually hear these things. And it's a sound you will never, ever forget. And as it got closer, and it didn't last very long, it wasn't very strong, but it scared the hell out of me. I can only imagine what earthquakes with a higher magnitude, David, would actually feel like, and the fear, the fright, and the devastation they would cause. And it boils me to a point, David, knowing that you have a system here that could actually prepare the public, save people, and the government is doing dick all about it.
Well, and not only the government, but it is a bit sad. I have apprised all the West Coast dailies, all the great dailies on the West Coast, and all the newspapers, all the radio and TV stations on the West Coast are apprised of your piece from last September, juxtaposed with the link from the NBC News with the 4.8 quake. And I'm not going to really complain and mention specific names or specific newspapers, but you'd be actually stunned to see the email responses that I've received. They're not interested in. Not only are they not interested in it's either crickets, silence, or really strange non sequiturs, which don't hide the bias and the prejudice, which is meant to be plainly expressed to me that They're not the least bit interested in it, and I'd be better off not emailing them. So, I talked about Alfred Wegener before the break, and I don't want to spend the whole interview on him, but some of the most scurrilous and damning comments uttered in the history of science were uttered toward this hero, this father of plate tectonics. He was actually almost physically attacked at the 1928 American Association of Petroleum Geologists at a symposium. He was booed off the podium in 1928. He was called a villain, blind to every fact, the footloose type, hectored and pilloried to his death in Greenland in the 1930s, where he was killed trying to garner proof that his goofy and incongruous theory, plate tectonics, was actually correct. So there his body remains. And the same people that did that to Alfred Wegener are the same people who have been telling us for the last century that earthquake prediction is impossible. The same litany of negativism, that it's ceaseless, and it's been drummed into every human on the West Coast. And as far as I'm sure people in Canada think, or people in Nigeria must think that too. It's not as impossible as it seems, though, because obviously something happened on the 26th, and it wasn't the first time that happened. It wasn't the 10th time it's happened. It's happened repeatedly over the last 15 years, and it's going to happen again. Unfortunately, what the West Coast dailies are going to want, I guess, is blood. They're going to want a real disaster, something sensational, and at that point into the future, they may not be, I've got all the emails. They may not be so haphazard about answering for the irresponsible behavior that they're engaging in right now.
Unbelievable. I've been talking to you, and I remember our conversation. It makes sense, especially since it's based on science. It's not based on fantasy.
Old science, back to Isaac Newton's time, back to the 1600s.
So why isn't it taken seriously? Why is it poo-pooed?
Well, Rob, they do know. That's the thing. They are well aware of it. It is a tenet in seismology. As I said the last time, it goes all the way back to the 1850s, and any decade you can pick in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, there are many seismologists in any part of the world who will have written peer-reviewed abstracts having to do with tidal triggering of earthquakes all around the world. It's just not something they'd like to talk about. You will not find it in seismology books because it opens the door to a predictive dynamic. If we admit to ourselves that there's a slight, and we don't even know if it's a slight increase, nobody knows on the West Coast because no one will study it. That's why I need this advisory council impaneled. If we admit that there's an increase in the probability for an earthquake on the West Coast during these tidal trigger events, we know when they're going to happen into the future, and oops, that means there's some form of earthquake prediction. And since they've said for a whole century, no, 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 they're stuck saying, wringing their hands and not really answering me. What they're doing is just, you can hear the crickets in the background. There's silence. I was in San Francisco during the morning rush Friday talking about this, and I'm actually getting to the point where I'm starting to wonder if, I'm challenging them on the air in their own backyard. Menlo Park was just down the street from the station where I was speaking. It's time really that we have a public debate. If tidal triggers are causes for increased triggering for earthquakes, why aren't we talking about this in the open? Why isn't the governor impaneling the council? And why isn't a full-fledged debate taking place on this matter?
I have a better question. And my question is to the scientific community. Why isn't the scientific community getting behind you, since they know very well for a fact that the tides, they've got the tide schedule. This is posted around the world. The U.S. Coast Guard, the NOAA, everyone can have access to the tide table.
Well, Rob, there are a few really courageous voices, and one that I'm glad you mentioned that because I never get a chance to thank her. The chief seismologist, one of three of the most eminent seismologists on planet Earth, Dr. Kate Hutton.
Yes.
If you were in California, you'd know of her. Your listeners, she's
I've heard of her. Yes.
She's of course you have. She's Los Angeles' earthquake lady. She's the most prominent seismologist in the world. She told the Los Angeles Weekly back in 1997.
All the way back to, what, 1997?
Very simply and curtly and cogently, and the quote is, Nabhan's theory deserves to be taken note of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 4 governors have taken their seat in California since she uttered those very simple words, and there's been, no one has followed her advice. Here's the chief seismologist at Caltech saying that the theory deserves to be taken note of. Dr. Tom Jordan, the director of the Southern California Earthquake Center in Los Angeles, told the AOL News in 2010 much the same thing, that he admitted very honestly that the tides cause small earthquakes. He said there's no evidence for large ones, but he admitted that they've been determined to cause sizable temblors. So there are honest voices in seismology that are hearkening to this, but USGS, unfortunately, and I respect them. They're a great organization. They're like NASA. They're like the Army Corps of Engineers. They're a superlative scientific body, but that doesn't mean that everything they do and say is holy writ. When it comes to earthquake prediction, they're flat wrong.
How about the insurance industry? Because they would have so much to gain from using your earthquake predicting. What do we call it? Science?
Well, it's a probabilistic formulation by which you can determine higher probabilities for earthquakes.
But the
that's what insurance is based on.
Exactly. So why don't they get behind you, and why don't they take a very serious look at it?
Well, not only the insurance, but and that's a good point. But the minute you start thinking about this, your mind goes down many paths. No one's ever asked the power companies or the gas companies or the nuclear regulatory agencies what might be done. We don't know what sort of tricks they might have up their sleeve, that if they were given some sort of a probabilistic idea to turn this on or turn this off, or move this dial this way temporarily just in case. What sort of benefit in the main over large areas with regard to millions of people, and then police and fire, just moving little tricks that the society could engage in, not just insurance. My God, that's only one small part of it, and then we're not even talking about what millions, tens of millions could do on their own. So. Once again, you ask why they shy away from it. 2 reasons. They're stuck on the orthodoxy, just like humans are always stuck on orthodoxy. They until the governor tells them that it can be done, that it makes sense, they won't even consider it. The guy who discovered the microscope, Leeuwenhoek, when he told the world that he was the first human to see microbes swimming in a drop of water, nobody believed him, and they refused to believe him. It required Isaac Newton and Christian Huygens and Robert Hooke to also look through. He had to beg them to look through his microscope. And when Isaac Newton said, yep, they exist, that's when the beginning of microbiology started. If it hadn't been for those courageous 3 scientists, poor Leeuwenhoek would have been left out in the cold, where I am. So Kate Hutton has spoken to this. Dr. Tom Jordan has spoken to it. But there's a cacophony of voices of naysayers on the other side that have overwhelmed the argument.
We're talking billions of dollars here. We're talking about lives here. Once again, the government agencies responsible, something doesn't make sense here. Is it because the masses don't realize the importance of this? And if the masses did realize this, would they have the power to bend the arm of government?
Well, Rob, the world is changing and changing fast. We're seeing people that have really been fed up with a lot of stuff. We're seeing that people are realizing that our banks aren't what they are supposed to, what we thought they were. Our financial institutions are not what we thought they were. Our military is not what we thought they were. Back in my grandfather's day, this world was an honest place. It turns out that everything is, when you dig deep, you find a lot of fake stuff in our society, that our institutions are rotting away, and that includes the newspapers that I just mentioned on the West Coast. That that's why they're going the way of the dinosaurs. That's why people don't pick up the LA Times anymore. I'm pinning my hopes on the fact, and God bless you and your courageous.
Hey, my friend, I hate to do this, but we've got to take our news break. Please stand by, David. David Nabhan is our special guest. EarthquakePredictors.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Welcome back, everyone. You want to talk about a complicated thing? That was Avril Lavigne singing Complicated. Well, if you're listening to this segment of the show, you must be scratching your head and saying, what the hell is going on? All right, my guest is David Nabhan. He spent the greater part of his life living in Southern California. He's an advocate who's been calling for the creation of an earthquake warning system for the U.S. West Coast for the last 2 decades. He proposes an informal scheme whereby newspapers might publish high priorities or probability advisories for elevated risks. And that has taken that controversial debate public in many media forums with the USGS, Caltech, and Southern California Earthquake Center. David took degrees at Mesa College and San Diego State University in the 1970s. He was a certified bilingual public school teacher for 19 years for the Los Angeles United School District and the LAUSD Earthquake Preparedness Coordinator at his school site in South Central Los Angeles for 15 of those years. David is the author of a previous book entitled Predicting the Next Great Quake, which was published in 1996. He's now retired, believe it or not, but he certainly doesn't sound retired, relocated to the Northeast where he travels, writes, and tutors Spanish. Now, he also has a book that we were talking about entitled
Forecasting the Catastrophe.
That's right. Thank you very much, David. I'm sorry about that. Which has, by the way, X-Zone Nation, an almanac calculated to 2020. Now, David, here we've got a system based on probabilities, just like the insurance company uses, and yet nobody's moving on it. I'm frustrated.
Well, as I said about people waiting for the institutions to move, that's not going to happen. People are, if this earthquake advisory system, if it's going to be put in place, people are going to actually, on the grassroots level, going to have to get up and insist upon it themselves. That's why the enterprise is simple. I'm hoping that people that are within earshot on your show and wherever I speak will go to earthquakepredictors.com. There's a direct link to the governor's office. The Honorable Jerry Brown should be impelled to convene. There's a vehicle to get this in place. All it requires is the governor to say, "Let's do it. Let's not do it, but let's check it out. Let's take the first baby step toward determining if the system is possible or not." Waiting for the newspapers to do it, waiting for the institutions to do it, for USGS and other stodgy institutions such as the banks that have sent our economy into a tailspin, and other institutions which have failed our country worldwide, actually. That's not going to work because, I'm not going to pound this to death, but I got to tell you, I'm no real friend or foe of either, Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity or those people who've made comments about the Los Angeles Times and the lack of fair play on the West Coast for the daily newspapers. But I got to tell you, in dealing with them over the last 2 decades, they're more right than wrong, because if you do not fit the paradigm that they've got, and they've got a simple one, they're hooked up with NOAA, they're hooked up with USGS. If it's Seattle, they're hooked up with Boeing. those people put funnels in their ears, and whatever they say, that turns out to be the news. And that's not fair. That's not the way this country was set up, or the way that Canada was set up. That's not what the fourth estate is supposed to be.
Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we get Linda Ronstadt to write a song and sing it to the governor?
Hey, I'll try anything, because there's really only one person I need to convince.
That's
I don't
right.
care about the LA Times or the San Francisco Chronicle. I don't care about anybody listening. If I can convince Jerry Brown to do the right thing, I will have done my duty. And my enterprise will be at an end.
Have you ever thought of doing an online petition?
Well, that's basically what I'm doing. At the very beginning, when you go to my website, you'll see the very first thing I say is, if there's something you can do, go to, and his link is at the bottom. And I'm hoping that your listeners will absolutely swamp the governor. I hope that he keeps, day after day, week after week, getting emails with people telling him about this. This David Nabhan guy, and his insistence on the earthquake prediction advisory council being convened. Most people on Earth don't even realize there is a California earthquake prediction advisory council. It really actually does exist. Can you believe it? When earthquake prediction is impossible, somehow somebody forgot to tell the governmental authorities that, and it's an anachronism, I guess, that USGS doesn't like to even talk about. I didn't know it existed 20 years ago. I'm guessing not one person out of a million knows it exists in Canada or the United States or anywhere else. It does exist. It should be convened, and this matter should be determined true or false, and it should be done right now.
Unfortunately, David, I think what it's going to take for Governor Brown to open up his eyes, because, don't want to make your brown eyes blue, as she's saying, is a catastrophe. And then somebody's going to go to him and say, Mr. Governor, that we could have been prepared for this. How? Well, David Nabhan.
And all those emails, there's going to be a record of all these emails. There's going to be a record of all these archives of all of your show and other shows. Unfortunately, Rob, boy, if you have to threaten people, I'm glad you said that, because a threat like that is, at this point, it's time maybe to take the gloves off and start punching a little bit harder.
Well,
You're absolutely right.
How about the backdoor approach, going to the, let's say, the LAPD, the LA Fire Department, the Emergency Measure Organization, FEMA, and giving them a heads up on what you're doing, and telling them the story, getting them on your side, because they would certainly bend and they would certainly have access to the governor's ear.
Rob, that's what I did the minute I got off your show last time. I emailed every single police chief and fire chief in Vancouver. I did it mostly in Canada because of the great quake that took place on the 9th on September.
Yeah.
I contacted the governor of British Columbia, the lieutenant governor of British Columbia, very nice guy, by the way, the lieutenant governor of British Columbia, very, very decent fellow. He responded in kind. You've read my mind. We're starting that at this moment. I don't know what the police chief of Vancouver thinks of the email, or the fire chief, but he was informed. And after this quake, along with the people of Seattle and Portland, and the Pacific Northwest, and all the way down California, and this quake that took place on October 26th, I emailed them just yesterday and said to ask them to please juxtapose the two emails, one warning them of something that might happen on the 26th, the other showing the NBC report of what happened on the 26th, showing the 3-hour difference in the incremental error based on something done 2.5 years ago, and asking them to please reply what they think this means. Now, your lieutenant governor has replied. So far, we'll see what the rest do, but that's an excellent idea, and that backdoor approach might be a very good one.
Now, if, let's say, the province of British Columbia was to institute your plan, wouldn't this be a bit of a kick in the butt to the state of California?
Sure would, and I hope they do.
Yeah.
Sure would, and I hope they do. If the governor is listening, or if Adrian, one of his high-ranking aides who I've been dealing with, is listening, I sure hope somebody does that, or the state of Washington could do it. I don't know if British Columbia has anything like the Earthquake Prediction Advisory Council, or if Washington does. I'm focusing on California because they've got the dynamics set up. They've got the infrastructure set up whereby they can just, all Mr. Brown has to do is pick up the telephone and say, please do this, and it will start to be done. I'm not familiar with the politics of British Columbia. I know that the governor is just a titular head, I believe. They don't really have any power, but they've got the power of public opinion behind them, and anything that comes through the auspices of the governor's office up there, I would be very much in his debt.
Well, you see, we don't have governors up here.
Well, you don't have governors that have actual power.
We've got is the head of the province is a prime minister.
Right.
The lieutenant
governor
the one
that runs things, but you do have a titular head. There's a titular head in, that has honorific member of Her Majesty's government.
Yeah, and that's about it. It's just a figurehead with actually no power, no say. Something that we've kept over from the days gone by. But you know what? It's so necessary. Whether it's in California, whether it's in Texas, whether it's Baja, Mexico, whether it's Vancouver, British Columbia, we need to get this system implemented because it does and will save lives. And I don't want to see it happen that they decide to use your system after the next great quake where hundreds, maybe thousands of people may perish and billions of dollars of damages. That's going to affect everybody's insurance premiums.
But Rob, isn't that the way humans do things? Unfortunately, if we can be adult about this, aren't we really refusing to say what we believe is really going to happen? I'm the guy in charge of this, and if you were to ask me to put my money down, I'd have to say that I think that's what's going to happen. Isn't that what happened in New Orleans? Everybody yammered on about those dikes and levees for decades, and now they're interested in them. After the barn is burned down and all the horses and cattle have run away, people start wondering about carpentry at that point, and fixing the hinges on the doors.
Exactly.
Isn't that the way humans do everything?
Unfortunately, yes. We don't learn.
I'm trying my hardest to make sure that this doesn't happen. But as far as, my personal interest, and as far as the way I consider my duty being done, of course, I would hope that what I've written would be useful in ameliorating the damage that is going to, especially in Southern California. There is going to be a big quake. It is coming soon, and people are going to die. If I can ameliorate it in some way that there's less death, less damage, less injury, that's one thing. But mostly, and I'm going to be very honest and very selfish about this, I'm doing this so that I can put it on the record that I did my duty, and that if it's not heeded, I will have washed my hands in public, and then whatever happens after that, I've got the record, and those people who dragged their feet, those people who might have caused things to be worse than they should have been, they may have something to answer for.
How about another backdoor approach using the schools? After all, you're a former school teacher. You know how kids get behind certain projects, and I've seen a number of students, a number of schools actually make a difference in not only municipal government, but state and federal. So why not get the schools behind this? Because if you can save children's lives at the same time, wouldn't the parents want to get behind this kind of plan? And not only would you have students, you'd have the school board, and then you've had the parents. Boom, out.
Well, Rob, that's what you're doing. That's what we're both doing right this moment. As we, as we're speaking, I'm hoping that the tens of thousands of people who have an interest in this matter, who have friends or relatives who live in Southern California, who live in Seattle, tell your friends, have them tell their friends, have people go to the website, get the word out, and from a grassroots point of view, there are a million things that need to be done. But if we can focus on, through the force and power of public opinion, to impel the governor to first do the right thing. Maybe I'm wrong. If we had a society that actually did things the correct ways without bundling derivatives that are worthless and selling them on Wall Street, what we do is we'd determine whether I'm blowing hot air or whether I'm talking the truth. That's what's required first. And we have a method by which we can do that. It's very simple. Have it reviewed scientifically. Have it reviewed by this panel that I keep referring to. That is going to be the door that will open the debate. And when that debate is opened, the earthquake prediction is impossible crowd is going to be in big trouble, because I've got tons of evidence that proves that this dynamic should be put in place.
What is
that it holds water.
What is the Earthquake Advisory Board doing now?
They don't do anything. What they no, it's I'm not making fun.
Yeah.
They don't sit. They only are convened. They're independent experts. They're independent seismologists, geologists, physicists, experts in their field in a quite varied number of fields that the governor. Since, obviously it's very rare that somebody like me comes along with an earthquake prediction or precursory seismic plan. When it does happen, and that's the sad part about it too. It happens so rarely. I think I don't know when the last time they were convened. They are convened when the governor requests them to be convened. They sit for a week or a month. They take a look at the plan and they review it, and they give the governor their professional expert opinion as to whether it's viable, feasible, or whether it's fallible and useless.
All right, stand by, David. You and I have to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, make a difference. You guys out there are not the ostrich type. We don't put our heads in the sand. We lift our heads high and say, how can we help? We're part of the solution, not part of the problem. Go to www.earthquakepredictors.com. Get your voice heard. Pass the information around. Save a life.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, no problem. You stand by. You and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break, David, as we continue here in the X-Zone with our guest this hour, David Nabhan. Once again, www.earthquakepredictors.com.
18 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today. www.soulbalancing.world.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. You know what, X-Zone Nation? Craig just held up a picture of Rudy Giuliani and a picture of Jerry Brown. They could pass for twins these days. Huh. What's going on here? And Linda Ronstadt, when will I be loved? It's very simple, Linda. You'll be loved really by Jerry, if he still does love you. I don't know what the relationship is. Maybe, Linda, if you're listening, you can get him to contact David and talk to David one-on-one about the earthquake prediction system that we've been talking about for the last hour. David, as always, great having you with us. You've got an important message that needs to get out there. We have to open up the eyes somehow before it's too late.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth about Ms. Ronstadt. If she is listening, I hope she will drop a line to Jerry and tell him that, all I'm asking is for him to to do the right thing. And in Canada and the United States, in San Francisco with the history of gold, hard-nosed, tough-minded, but fair-minded gold rushers, we're the United States and Canada is two countries where when you talk about somebody being given a fair shot, that's what these countries are about. I mean, I'm not asking for anything that I don't deserve, nothing more, nothing less than a fair hearing. And I don't think most people, feel distressed when that's denied somebody, especially when the matter at hand, this is a very serious matter.
Yeah.
I don't want to end it with, panic and fear-mongering, but when those southern sections of the San Andreas move around greater Los Angeles, USGS says 2,000 people are going to die, 40,000 people are going to be injured, and there won't be numbers enough to count how much damage will be there in its wake. So something needs to be done rather than, as you said, sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich. Something. And since my plan, in lieu of anybody else suggesting anything, I'm suggesting that this plan be looked at, and the governor's link is on my website. If your listeners would be kind enough, I'd be greatly in their debt if they would drop him a quick email saying, hey, I heard the guy on the radio. He doesn't sound insane to me. And by God, you ought to really at least give him a chance to see what sort of water his dynamics hold. Dr. Kate Hutton says you should listen to it. That's good enough for me, and that should be good enough for anybody.
And of course, it's very important that we get this word out there. Pass the word along. Get your friends, your family, your relatives, whether they're in the United States, Europe, anywhere where you listen to the show. Go to www.earthquakepredictors.com. That's www.earthquakepredictors.com. David, we've come to the end of this segment. I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. We'll have to have you back on in the near future because this is a topic that needs to be pushed. People need to make changes. And, after all, isn't the great United States of America based on we the people instead of I the person?
It certainly is, and I am greatly in your debt for standing up for that.
Oh, it's my great pleasure, my friend. It's always great talking to you. Quickly, give our listeners, plug your books and plug your website.
Well, the Forecasting the Catastrophe is now an ebook. It's only $3. I've made it to where anybody can grab it, within a minute for just for a few dollars. Go to www.earthquakepredictors.com. Click on the link. Check the book out. It's number 3, I believe, in the seismology in the world, number 3 ebook on planet Earth right now. It goes up and down, but it's doing very well.
Excellent.
And I would hope anybody interested would give it a look. And if not, there's plenty on the website to check out.
All right, David, we've got to hustle along here. www.earthquakepredictors.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is The X-Zone. We'll be back after this news break at 6.5 minutes past the hour. Don't go away.